The Human Centipede, first sequence. A psychotic retired surgeon kidnaps 3 tourists. Why, you ask? Because he wants to sew them together. Butt to mouth. Ay, ay, ay. Hey guys, hope all was jiggy. So this Halloween, I've decided to take on the Human Centipede trilogy. Hopefully my channel won't get deleted in the process. Now, the first Human Centipede actually means a lot to me because of all the ways it affected me before I even saw it. See, as much as I love horror films, torture stuff just doesn't really appeal to me. So I was unaware of the Human Centipede and its insane reputation. I wasn't really its audience. But in October 2010, almost 19-year-old me walked into HMV and saw this haunting DVD cover. Curious, I picked it up and read the back of it, and I was confused. It wasn't well explained how the people were sewn together. Gastric system? What? How? Intrigued, I looked it up, and all the low scores told me that it was just another trashy horror film. I lost all interest. Only a few days later, my girlfriend and I were hanging out with her flatmate, and he told us that his boyfriend was currently at home watching the Human Centipede. He then dropped the bomb and elaborated on the detail I missed out on. The characters are connected butt to mouth and are forced to consume poop. I then realized what was really happening on that front cover. Wow. Now, like the rest of the world, my girlfriend and I were shocked and repulsed. But later on that night, we decided to watch the trailer on YouTube just for a laugh. But when watching the trailer, we became too scared to laugh. And it was all thanks to the villain. I'm not exaggerating, guys. When I saw that face, I became genuinely scared. This guy wants to sew people together? Butt to mouth? Chills. Utter chills. My girlfriend ended up missing most of the trailer because she had to look away from the screen. He put her in that much of a bad state. And you know what? I shared her feelings, yet I couldn't look away from the screen. My heart raced, I could feel my pulse go up, and my stomach was full of butterflies. When the trailer was over, I decided to decompress by watching some hip-hop videos. I began watching the music video for Warren G's Regulate, and my girlfriend was such a nervous wreck. She was like, "What are you watching now? What is this?" Calm down, darling. It's just a hip-hop video. It's all good. That's how much the Human Centipede villain got to her. And I didn't laugh at her for it, because I was sharing the same fear. And considering that being actually scared by a film was such a rare treat for me, I just had to see the full film. I wasn't interested in all of the nasty details, I just needed to see more of that villain, Dr. Heiter. Quick side note, my girlfriend lived in Chester at the time, and I lived in Bath. So when I got the midnight train back home, it was a 4-hour journey. I was alone on that dark train with that face stuck in my head for 4 hours. I was almost 19, yet I felt like a 4-year-old kid again, in need of a nightlight. The Human Centipede had messed me up, and I hadn't even seen it yet. But eventually, I did, and as flawed as the Human Centipede was, I still disagreed with all of its low ratings. It was nowhere near as graphic as expected, and just like the trailer, the film scared me. And on a quick side note, I became such a fan of this bad guy that I decided to dress up as him for Halloween 2011, the day after my 20th birthday. Me, my girlfriend, and buddies all went to the club for Halloween dressed up like nutcases. Of course, no one knew that I was trying to play as the bad guy from the Human Centipede because I wasn't a tall, skinny German and I had dreadlocks. But goddammit, I tried. The intent was there. The point is, the film had an effect on me, and that's why, all this time later, I have such a nostalgic attachment to the Human Centipede. And you know what? It still scares me. So let's get into it. No big spoilers for now, guys, but I will talk big spoilers after I've given my rating. So, The Human Centipede was written and directed by Dutch filmmaker Tom Six. How did he come up with the film's concept?
I once saw a child molester on television, and I thought, what would be a good punishment for him? I said, what if they sew his mouth to the ass of a very fat truck driver? That would be a good punishment.
Damn, I'm not the biggest fan of Six, but I have to give him props for how he made such an impact on the horror scene for a while after just cracking one gross joke. Quite incredible.
Yeah, it just started out as a very sick joke, and it grew out, it spread it like a virus all over the world.
It was his first international film, and although $1.5 million is quite a low budget for a film, it was easily the biggest budget he had ever worked with. He only got the funding for the film because he specifically didn't mention that his victims would be sewn together butt to mouth. So, after all of that perseverance, the film was made to mixed results. Guys, the first act is full of problems. The intro scene with the trucker just didn't need to be here at all. And Jenny and Lindsay just aren't interesting protagonists. We don't get to learn much about them at bloody all. Their earlier scenes are full of boring horror tropes, and they speak in this exaggerated way that gives me a headache.
There's no signal. There's always a signal. I'm not walking anymore. I'm not moving. I'm staying right here. Good.
And I don't blame the actresses for these bad performances. I think this is all due to Six's poor dialogue being too big an obstacle for their talents to overcome. Because when they're not spouting this dribble, they convey the horror extremely well. I think they give genuinely great performances once the horror begins, which happens almost instantly. It's good that we don't have to stomach their dialogue for long, but it's also a shame that we didn't get much of a chance to care about these two girls. Still, it all picks up when Dr. Heiter gets properly introduced. An actor, Dieter Laser, he elevated this film to new heights. Like I said, he was the sole reason why I wanted to see The Human Centipede in the first place, and he didn't disappoint me at all. Of course, a lot of that is due to his look, his prominent jawline and cheekbones, his tall, slim frame. He's just perfect for this role. But it's more than just his look. This guy acts his ass off. His deep, scary voice delivers the dialogue in such a scary way that always gives me goosebumps.
We start with cutting the ligaments of the kneecaps. Knee extension is no longer possible.
The healing pains are twice as intense.
You are the middle piece.
And what stuns me is that Dieter Laser was one of those cases where an actor terrifies you on screen, but is surprisingly lovely and wholesome off screen.
Dieter Laser is your real name, right?
That's my real name. I am a laser beam.
What an actor. And Dr. Heiter is as interesting as he is scary. I love the little details that bring him to life, like how he always wears sunglasses outside, even in the rain, implying that he's not used to daylight. He doesn't go out much. Almost all of his movements feel purposeful and calculated, and because he's rich and organized, his home is totally misleading. It looks posh and tidy, but after just a few minutes inside, you'll notice that there's nothing human about it. No sense of love, pictures of family or friends. It's just as vacant and cold as the soul of its owner. The closest thing you'll see to human here are the bedside picture of his first victims and their gravestone. That hurts me, and I'm glad, so glad, we never got to see his three-hound in action. And I love Heiter's reaction when Lindsay calls him a sick man.
I'm a sick man.
He's not mocking her. He genuinely thinks there's nothing wrong with him, that he's a god amongst insects. And when this god makes his own insect, he actually cries with pride. But the issues still persist. The guy who plays Katsuro gives a wonderful performance here, but that noise he makes is so stupid, I'm surprised it hasn't since become a meme. And the escape attempt sequence is just painful. When the generator goes, Heiter just walks away to fix it, as if that's more pressing than the girl he was just chasing, and he leaves her to free roam around the house.
Jesus Christ.
But it's all good because instead of just continuing to run away, Lindsay decides to go back to drag Jenny out. It's so long and drawn out. We all know what's gonna happen, and it's so stupid. I always skip this part. It's easily the worst part of the film for me. Once the midpoint hits, it totally grips me. You just don't often see victims in horror films exist like this. Seeing them try to navigate their surroundings, sewn together, being treated like a pet, it's disturbing, man. I also care about these victims too. Sure, the two girls were annoying, but they are good people. They don't deserve this. So I just beg for them to get free. The same goes for Katsuro at the front, even though we don't get to know him much. Speaking of which, having a Japanese man at the front was such a good idea. As if being sewn together wasn't bad enough, these poor victims can't even communicate amongst themselves. And again, you have to appreciate the acting. You don't see people perform like this often and have the burden of keeping you engaged whilst in a position like this. It's a different type of acting. I don't know what the word for it is. I don't know if there is a word for it. But it couldn't have been easy. I'm sure there's nothing in acting school telling you how to do stuff like this.
I had the pressure of like two people's asses on my jaw.
And I appreciate how Dr. Heiter changes. We get to see the film's tagline come to fruition. We get to see Dr. Heiter live out his fantasy, acting like a creepy child with his new puppy. Christ, he even swims nude in front of the centipede, because humans don't feel ashamed of being nude in front of their pets. He also rarely acknowledges each victim. He mostly considers them all to be one unit, one entity, one pet. Ugh. Yes, the Nazi symbolism is too on the nose and kinda cheap, and I don't know how Dr. Heiter got the centipede up and down the stairs when they were unconscious. Maybe there's an elevator shaft we didn't see? I don't know. Still, this midpoint messes me up in all the right ways. And considering the lack of cheap gore or overly graphic details, not even any excrement on screen, I'm not joking when I say that I see actual class here. I can't fully talk about it now, but the third act is also pretty intense. Sadly, it leads to a pretty lame ending, but it doesn't taint the entire film for me. So, in the end, I think The Human Centipede is better than its reputation would have you believe. It has plenty of bad moments and stupidity, make no mistake, but it also has some understated greatness. A lot of the violence and gross details are implied, the acting can be great when the horror truly begins, and the main villain is one of the best baddies I've ever seen in horror. R.I.P. to you, Dieter Laser, you absolute legend. But the biggest compliment I can give this film? It legitimately scares me, and not many films out there can do that to me. So I say, check it out, if you have the stomach for it. I'm gonna give The Human Centipede a 6.5 out of 10. So now, on to the big spoilers. I think it's just too stupid how Dr. Heiter intended on putting the police officers in his centipede. As if the local police force wouldn't know that the last place they went to was his house. Dumb, dumb, dumb. Other than that, on my first watch, this third act was all sorts of intense. When Katsuro fights back, for me it was one of those moments where you just can't help but raise a fist. I was squirming in my seat, not knowing where the film was gonna go. But then it all ends with a very cheap gotcha moment. Just when we think we're building up to one of the strangest, most original fight scenes we'll ever see, Katsuro gives a monologue explaining how he's lived a bad life, and then self-deletes. The monologue was actually well written by the actor who plays Katsuro, and his acting here is honestly fantastic. But it's still stupid. Why did Katsuro end his life here when he could have done so 10 minutes earlier when he got the scalpel? I'll tell you why. Because Tom Six wanted to catch us off guard and give us a shocking ending. For me, it just breaks the fourth wall. I cannot realistically see Katsuro abandoning the girls like this after all they had just gone through. I can only see Tom Six thinking that he was being clever. He wasn't, it just sucks. And it does kind of taint the catharsis I feel every time I rewatch this third act. However, I do give full props to the ending for being very different. Where else have you seen an ending exactly like this? And on a personal note, I actually do believe that Lindsay survives this ending. The two dead police officers had a search warrant, so the police will notice when they haven't reported back. Also, if the neighbors heard Lindsay screaming in the garden, they would have heard all of the gunshots. And if nothing else, she could use Katsuro's piece of glass to cut herself free. But if all of that is true and she does get free, the rest of her life will always be affected by this sickening experience. It's unpleasant, but that's horror. It is a well done third act in areas, but there's so much wrong with it. Hence why I can't give The Human Centipede the higher rating I want to. Up next is my review of the second film. Wish me luck. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay jiggy. The better appreciation.